That report from Nick Grimm. As we move more and more into an election year, the Prime Minister will no doubt be banking on maintaining the current low unemployment rate. Economic management is his biggest single perceived advantage over new Labor leader Kevin Rudd. But there are, of course, layers of complexity behind the stats, complexities that go to much longer hours of work for some and not enough work for others. One social and economic institute points out, for instance, that many Australian workers now work harder than their counterparts anywhere in the rest of the industrialised world, even Japan. Church leaders are expressing concern about the impact of work stress on families, and one health study points to higher levels of work-related depression and more visits to doctors. So much for the lotus land of a few decades ago. And while we're awash in consumer goods and lifestyle choices, as a nation, we're also awash in personal debt. Greg Hoy reports on some of the realities of a modern working life.
Summertime and the living, well, the late Melbourne photographer Rennie Ellis celebrated the theory that life's a beach down under, and lately you might have agreed with him. Before he headed off to the beach himself to smell the salt air and tread the sandy foreshores, the head helmsman of the nation's capital gathered the press at the Prime Ministerial Mansion on Sydney's foreshore to remind Australians how good things are right now, as measured by historically low unemployment figures.
I think the jobs figures today are wonderful. And isn't this what it's all about? There's no greater indicator, there's no greater mark of economic success than low unemployment.
Enough to raise some eyebrows to the heavens. No one denies we have much to be thankful for, but there's a genuine concern about a strong undercurrent in the workplace that is largely ignored in Australian economic policy.
Modern hours of work that span all of the time we have available seem to pay no heed to the ancient wisdom that saw even the Creator take rest on the seventh day.
Australians now work more hours each year than workers in any other country in the industrialised world. More than the super efficient Germans, more than the Americans who only get 1 or 2 weeks annual leave, more even than the Japanese, who are famous for a phenomenon known as karoshi, or death by overwork.
It's important that we understand that some people's working hours and their workloads have increased. That's partly to do with a skills shortage and the fact that we have ever-rising number of job advertisements and they're not all being filled because we do have a skills shortage.
The workforce is really being divided into two groups. Those who are working full-time and who are working longer and more intense hours throughout a 7-day working week, and those who are working part-time, casual, what we tend to call contingent, who are struggling to find the requisite amount of work under appropriate conditions to allow them to live their lives.
We now have the best labour market in this country in my lifetime. The best. This is what it is all about. If it's not about providing jobs for Australians and thereby security and stability for Australian families, what is economic policy all about?
It's an emotional argument riddled with contradictions. There are, of course, those workaholics delighted to have longer working hours, just as, conversely, there are those economists who seriously question the accuracy of unemployment figures, suggesting they mask a serious underemployment problem. That's an old argument that predates the Howard government, but one, it's argued, that's more pronounced with the deregulation of the workplace and the casualisation of many full-time jobs.
Now, according to these statisticians, a job is working for pay 2 hours a fortnight. So if you create 20 jobs at 2 hours a fortnight, that's the same thing as creating one full-time job. But the statistics look like 20 jobs have been created, whereas otherwise only one. I'll give you a statistic. In 1963, 65% of the Australian population worked 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. In 2007, that's 8%.
People want choice in their work environment, and that means that some people will be casualised, but the casualisation of that is a demonstration of their choice to be able to balance out their life, work and personal choices.
You sure they want that?
I think different people want different things. It's not one thing or the other. Different people want different arrangements in work, and a one-size-fits-all category doesn't mean that Australians are going to have their needs met.
Underneath what appear to be quite good politically quite good economic figures are actually some quite disturbing human figures, and I think that's one of the reasons why this work-life balance is on the agenda politically at the moment.
The work-life balance is set to be tested as an election issue, with the political parties divided as to whether recent workplace reforms have helped or exacerbated the problem, which is compounded by the pressure of rising household debt as the cost of housing soars and the risk of rising interest rates a perennial possibility. Indeed, the Australia Institute says rampant consumerism and unsustainable ambitions of affluence remain a big factor in increasing workloads. Regardless of the causes, the costs are becoming more evident.
There are plenty of marriages that have broken down as a result of the pressure that overwork has placed on people, the need to pay off big debts and the excessive hours they've worked, and it's tragic.
And you add that then to the reality of many modern workplaces where people are expected to be available. Maybe 24 hours a day, maybe 7 days a week, where people are living with a constant low level of anxiety.
Researchers like Dr. Rini D'Souza at the ANU's College of Medicine and Health Sciences have been studying the impact of workplace changes on a sample of 2,250 ACT workers, half public servants, half not.
They rated low on poor physical health, and they also had higher number of visits to the GP. We also looked at another aspect, looking at job insecurity and how that was affecting physical and mental health, and we found similar or even stronger associations between high job insecurity and depression, anxiety and visits to the GP.
These factors, according to the researchers, had a clear impact on sick leave. The conclusions drawn are unlikely to be popular with the government.
This amount of job demands and long working hours is not going to be sustainable in the future. It's going to have an effect on people's mental and physical health. It's going to be a burden on the healthcare system. That in itself is going to be a large cost for the nation.
It all makes the next summer holiday seem a long, long way away. So is life really a beach in Australia these days, or is that just a fanciful notion? It's a question that might well be answered at the ballot box.
Greg Hoy with that report.